I was a little bit worried about that. Hello there, everybody. Savant92, aka Nightmare, and welcome back to RB Axolotl. So, how do I... Okay, how the hell do I describe what the hell we learned last week? So, we tried to get ourselves into the void. The babies came back, ripped Lana's tail off. Finally, Axie got some sense snapped into him, and we escape into the void, and we reunited with Liam and Ank, who seem to be in a much better relationship, oddly, which is... it's... different. Honestly, I was expecting those two to be at each other's throats, but apparently they're somehow getting along. And now we come to discover that all 5 of the axolotls were initially one person, and this name, using the first letters of each of their names, becomes Alan. Interesting. Very interesting. So now I'm really curious to see what the hell this is all about. Like, I'm guessing we're finally going to see, like, what the deal is with these guys. Okay. Well, we're here. Right off the bat, huh? It looks like we're going to have to deal with this place first.
This place? What exactly is this place?
It's a hospital. It's a hospital where a lot of bad things happened. That seems wrong. Or maybe not entirely right. What else do you remember about this environment, Liam? Well, aside from it being horrible, the staff treating us like animals. Not too much, to be honest. Psychiatric hospital? I know the patients aren't treated very nicely in those places, or an insane asylum.
I want you to think about what RB just told us, Liam. We've got to fill in the gaps for each other where our memories are missing.
We're starting at the beginning, aren't we?
That's right. I don't know what happened to us later in life at this hospital, but before that, before anything, this hospital saved our life. Wait, do you mean... That's right, Lana. We were born here.
I remember too. F. Morgana Hospital. You cheeky son of a... I see what you did there! I see what you did there! Can't slip that past me! Oh, god damn it. I swear all these references just make me all giddy. September 22nd, 4:53 a.m. A baby boy was born via cesarean section. Premature by over a month and a half, our weight was a mere 3 pounds and 3 ounces. For whatever reason, we weren't getting good enough oxygen. So they monitored our mother, and as soon as our lungs were developed enough, they decided to take us out. They warned her, both of our parents, about possible complications. We could have had birth defects, we could have been born without a working heart, or had a cognitive disability growing up. It was very possible that we could have died as an infant and had no life at all. But we lived. After the successful operation, we spent over a month and a half in the neonatal intensive care unit. It was only due to the hard work of the nurses and doctors staffed at the time that we were able to have a life in the first place. It was in this way that our essence began taking shape, truly, and we were born.
I can't remember that time at all.
Well, yeah, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who'd remember stuff from when they were an infant. Our parents told all of this to us secondhand. What do you remember, Axie? What are some of your earliest memories?
Earliest memory? I couldn't tell you what comes first chronologically, but I do remember a couple snapshots from when we were young bucks. Riding our tricycle in the backyard and playing in the sandbox like a toddler on a mission. Crawling around the floor of the living room like a rugrat. Then turning on the TV and actually watching Rugrats.
I love those shows.
Cartoons are the best. I remember us eating ice cream in the park with our dad. I remember doing boring errands with our mom. There's a nice lady at the drugstore who always gave us candy. Sleepy bedtime stories at night, going to the park, swarming with people, for a jazz concert with our parents. I remember Cub Scouts and soccer, and even a little bit of preschool where I think I had my first ever crush. The list goes on and on. You mentioned our parents. I remember them too. They really loved us back then, huh? They must have prayed for us real hard to live when we were in the hospital. I can't imagine what they went through.
I remember the bastards too, but maybe not as wistfully as you do, Lana.
Dad was a repairman, and Mom was a chef down at a local restaurant. I think they were modest. Simple but hardworking. A little old-fashioned, but from what I'm starting to remember, they loved us a ton. Oh yeah, we had fun as heck childhood, and it was because of them, I think. I can't believe you guys don't remember the good times. I do a bit. Oh, I remember water balloon fights on hot days. I remember sleepovers with some of our best friends. How we used to play anime card games late into the late hours of the night and beat each other up via video games like Super Smoosh Bros and Mario Kart.
Leave it to Axie to remember all the dumb shit. All the unimportant shit.
But Hank, don't you remember that time we followed those train tracks all the way down to the woods in order to find a dead body?
Did that really happen?
He's thinking of a movie we watched, I think. I know what you're thinking of. Well, yeah, but that doesn't change a single thing. It's still nostalgic to me. Growing up and exploring Enchinos with all our friends were some of the most magical parts of our lives. Or of our life, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
What did you say? And Chinos?
Yep, that's where we were born. That's where we lived most of our life, I think. The sleepy, small, yet totally exciting town of Enchinos.
A long time ago, Abi told me that he'd named me Ank after something called Ankinos. I guess our hometown must be more important to him than he's let on.
What's not to love about Enchinos? The community is tight-knit. It's quiet and homely here, and we're only about an hour away from a big city. It's definitely fuzzy for me, but I do remember a lot of happiness growing up where we did. The lake in particular was where we spent a lot of time, I think. Does anybody else remember spending a lot of time there?
Vaguely. We used to come up with ideas on that lake, didn't we?
Yep! About all sorts of things. And not a care in the world while we did it, too. I feel weird for bringing this up, but we drew a few important pictures with our friend at that lake. Our friend... What was her name? Does anyone remember?
Not me.
No!
Nah.
Our friend. I think I feel the same way as you do, Lana. I want to remember her, but I can't. It was a really happy time after all.
Hey, aren't we ignoring something very important? I know we had a fun childhood, but as much as I'd like to romanticize it, like you guys are, it wasn't all great.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but I think I was born sometime then. And while I wouldn't qualify anything in our childhood as a dead day, exactly, not as they became in the future, we were a little bit more fragile than the other kids.
I would hesitate to call us sickly in our childhood, but we did miss a decent amount of school.
Almost every year, sometimes for a week or two at a time.
I remember there was one year, though, where I think we got perfect attendance. A miracle, surely.
Yeah, we missed school, but it wasn't much more than the average kid.
Maybe it was even less than the average kid.
Our absent days weren't too abnormal for someone with a weak immune system and poor digestion. Back then, we were always on some special diet, or some sort of supplemental recommendation by the school nurse. None of them seemed to work. Or if they did work, they'd crap out a few months later, sending us right back to square one.
Our parents got frustrated with the whole damn thing and stopped helping us when we were teenagers. That is how I remember them.
Hank.
In grade school and middle school, it wasn't just digestion issues that kept us home from school. We'd get a lot of fevers, a lot of sore throats and coughs, and other things. Again, not so unusual for a child, but the frequency in which we got them was on the higher side.
I remember at some point a doctor spitballing that because we were born so early, we had a weaker immune system than most. We better take care of ourselves.
But the main difference between our flirtations with sickness as a child and with that as an adult is that the sickness was not something that took over our lives. It was something that happened that we got over and never really thought about much.
Yeah, we didn't ruminate on it back then.
Everyone gets sick sometimes.
We had long periods of wellness and growth and productivity. Yeah, I mean, even if the sick days kind of sucked, we could at least play video games and watch the cartoons they showed on TV during the day. That was always kind of a treat, you know? Watching the old cartoons that we only got to see during summer break and special occasions? It made those days at home seem not that bad. Even still, like y'all said, we still had a normal childhood for the most part, and never let the sick days take over our lives.
Until they did.
You morons shouldn't equate the sick days of our childhood to all the bullshit that came afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, even if we were absent from school a fair amount, it isn't worth doting on.
It was only in high school where it got bad, I think. Yeah, it was a miracle we even graduated. We were absent so much near the end.
The teachers of ours called it senioritis. If only, maybe in another dimension.
Well, it was during the start of our senior year that our parents died, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was really hot and humid that day, overwhelmingly so. We were coming home from school like always, except the difference was that on that day, our house was up in flames. Unless anyone knows anything, my specifics of that time are off. All I can remember are the flames, the crowd of people, the ambulances. Not even the funeral.
The only thing I can remember is that we'd not been on the best terms with them at that point in time. But I don't even remember what we'd been mad at them for. All I know is that it doesn't matter. That was just another added regret to my heart.
I remember the police. No foul play suspected. What a load of crap!
It's not like they had enemies. At least, I don't think they did.
I don't know any of the specifics about how they died, but I do remember what we'd been arguing about them in the months beforehand.
Arguing about what?
Our sickness. This was before it had gotten as severe as it eventually did. But back then, we were still fatigued and sick to our stomach almost every day. As a result, we missed a lot of days in school that year. Eventually, we were at the point, if we missed any more days, we'd risk not graduating. So our parents forced us to attend class no matter what. It didn't matter if we were doubled up on the floor. It didn't matter if we'd been up the entire night writhing in pain. They'd yell at us blindly, threaten us to attend class or else.
I see.
They took us to the doctors, of course, initially. But as time would prove again and again, the test results only came up as negative for quite some time. IBS. Psychosomatic pain disorder. No vitamin deficiencies. Negative.
I know our parents, Liam. They took care of us and sacrificed so much of their own lives to be there for us growing up.
I never said they didn't do that.
I have little doubt they loved us too. Parenting is hard, and the relationship between a parent and child is not completely black or completely white. At the time, they thought that what they were doing was best for us. That we'd snap out of it and become stronger as a result. That never happened, of course, and it was the wrong way to go about it. But I truly believe that they had good intentions. Well,
I see. I just have all these memories of them telling us they loved us and all these other wholesome things.
You say there aren't usually black and white relationships, no. Did you forget what comes next?
I remember. We went to live with our aunt after our parents died.
That's right. The Queen herself.
But it was only for a short number of months.
She definitely wasn't a good person.
She would threaten us, even when we were children. She stole some of our inheritance money, I think, and it was only later in life we realized that fact. She was also emotionally manipulative.
Well, we eventually emerged from high school. We weren't broken yet. We had hope that the bad times are behind us, even though the bad times had not begun yet in earnest. Because of our parents and the insurance, at least we had some money. The money our aunt didn't steal from us.
It was our parents' wish that we go to college, right?
And we did. We went to college and dormed in a room with one of our friends from high school. Boy, did that turn sour quickly. We made it, what was it, 3 semesters?
This is around the time where my memories start becoming clearer. I remember standing in line for student registration and not being able to stand up straight. I was overwhelmingly tired for absolutely no reason. And the next day, I remember being woken up by pain, like 100 needles twisting around inside of my body. I remember our sleep quality suffering, and our grades becoming worse and worse, because we were unable to deal with class. We may have had bad days before, but none of the days before this could be considered dead days. Now we were dealing with dead days.
Dead days?
That's right. But that's what we called them. An unproductive day of laying in bed. Too sick to move, too sick to do anything. But try to live. It was a day where we might as well have been dead because we accomplished absolutely nothing of importance. A day playing video games and relaxing wasn't a dead day. A dead day involved nothing but staying in bed, tired out of our mind, barely glancing at our phone. The heat of the room welling up, wishing that we were dead. Dead days were the worst days, and we had years worth of them.
Oh, yeah. I'm starting to remember some of those dead days. But it wasn't all bad back then, was it?
The dead days were infrequent at the start.
We had some help to deal with things. Yeah, a friend from high school.
Yeah, they were our roommate. A lot of the time when we were too sick, they brought us food or water. They really cared for us. They were amazing.
But eventually we became even too much for them, right?
Yeah.
The feeling pressure from our grades, our insomnia, our growing inability to eat food, our constant lethargy. It all came together to create a perfect mental health meltdown during our second year.
We saw a psychiatrist for the first time and they prescribed us antidepressants and sleeping pills.
That's right. They tried to shut me up. But you can't shut up, Hank. It only made me stronger.
Unfortunately, while the medications they prescribed worked initially, they eventually pooped out.
Because how medicine works, our body basically adjusts itself to that medication until the point where the medicine no longer has an effect. Some had bad side effects.
A few were even addicting, more of a curse than a blessing. As the years went on, we tried medication after medication in order to control our overwhelmingly negative thoughts. It was too late when we realized later on that a few of those substances may have done permanent damage to our brain.
We made a mistake pushing ourselves through college at that time, as our parents might have made us done. Not pacing ourselves made things much worse overall. That's the worst thing about college, just getting overwhelmed. Like, hell, there was a time that I was so overwhelmed by the work I was bedridden for an entire week because the stress was literally killing me. Okay, maybe not literally, but it made me feel god-awful.
After college didn't work, I remember we moved in with our roommate's family. Oh, they were awesome! Yeah, they helped us a lot with food and stuff and encouraged us to seek out more medical care.
Which we did. We started seeing doctors again and doing various tests. Bloods, neurological, specialized digestive tests. Negative, negative, negative. We were starting to think that we were going crazy.
Weren't we, though? A little?
Yes, of course. Our body was shutting down. Our mental health was getting worse and worse, and the pills not working made us feel like we were pushed up against a wall.
Our mental state wasn't good at the time, but that's nothing to be ashamed of.
There are different degrees of worthlessness, though.
Yeah. Soon it got even worse. We had to move out of the dorms after we dropped out of college. We got our own apartment in a sketchy neighborhood. That was all we could afford, living off the tiny bit of money left. For many young adults, getting your own place would be seen as a huge accomplishment. For us, though, it took all of our strength just to move there, with a ticking time bomb of savings and newly accrued debt. We'd had a lot of insomnia and a lot of worries leading up to that day. But once we were there, we resolved ourselves.
That's right. We did, Egghead. We were going to get better. We were going to protect ourselves.
We were going to get ourselves a job to support ourselves, follow our dreams.
We gotta get ourselves out of this mess. Get our shit together. Become a functioning member of society. No matter what.
Ceiling. Know it well.
This room.
It's a room we spent a lot of time in.
And the room we suffered the most in. A hot and stuffy room that encompassed our lives for the majority of a decade.
It wasn't supposed to be like this.
Yeah. When we first moved in, we made a vow to ourselves, remember?
It's going to be a new chapter in our life. All the pain of the past is gone. The future will be bright. If only we knew how many plateaus of suffering we'd end up reaching from that point onwards.
We tried our best to change our lifestyle. We tried different diets, supplements, herbs, and doctor's visits in order to improve our digestion, our energy, and our horribly foggy brain. We tried to take care of ourselves in this room as best as we could. There was a list we followed religiously for a while. It wasn't bad advice. Sleep hygiene, eating 3 healthy meals a day, at least half hour of heart-pumping exercise per day. Although that got harder to do as time went on, as did eating and sleeping. These things, which should have helped us regain our health, became harder and harder to accomplish the sicker we got.
It was around this time where our blood tests started showing signs of illness. It was nothing that the doctor seemed alarmed about. This hospital was overworked. There were 1 million patients a day, and we were just a lone young man who should have been fine by all rights.
There were good and bad doctors we saw at the time. The good doctors listened to us and communicated with us to try and find a solution. The bad doctors scowled at us, saying stuff like, "I've seen your kind before," and pushed us out of the office as quickly as possible.
After a time, we were diagnosed accordingly with anemia and malabsorption and low vitamin D, and we began supplementing in the hope that it would improve. We followed their orders to a T, but nothing we did had any sort of remarkable change.
And if we complained of our suffering, more psychiatric medicines would be dispensed to us.
We kept trying those too, a lot of them in fact, to mixed and negative results. The hospital, this specific hospital we attended, started to seem more like a mill every day. We put all our energies into getting to the doctor's appointments, trying to tell them about how we felt.
We had doctors literally shrugging their shoulders as they began to look at our chart, crowded with tests.
Why couldn't we switch hospitals? Try something new.
I can answer this one. It was plainly put, our insurance. That hospital we went to was the only one that the government provided to us. To switch would cost more than we could afford, living off a set amount of money. The healthcare system, terrible.
In fact, it was at this point where we said, screw it. We try to struggle through life anyway in the hope that things would get better. We got a job, which was a lot for someone who got exhausted walking down the street.
The job, just like going to school I'd previously done, only made things worse for us ultimately. We'd come home from work every single day, stumbling in the door like some drunk. Immediately fall into bed until fell into bed, sorry.
Sleep, when we could get it, wasn't restful. It was never restful.
Even though the job wasn't physical, it was making us exhausted just to walk the couple dozen steps to the car and to the office a day.
You later found out the term for what we were feeling was, right?
Yep. It was called post-exertional malaise.
PEM. It meant that tasks which most people our age might have found easy exhausted us to an unreasonable degree. And we needed a much longer time to recover.
Just to cope with our existence, we started taking more of the tranquilizers and narcotic pain medicines prescribed by the doctor. We used them as a means of dulling the pain to the point where we could get through the day. And we never took more than the prescribed dose.
We ended up quitting our job after only a month and a half. Not for our safety, but for the people around us. Walking, listening to orders, and doing simple tasks was starting to become a challenge. The short car ride to and from the office was starting to become too dangerous to undertake.
As soon as we found ourselves unfit to drive, we stopped. There was no way we're going to risk anyone else's lives for our meaningless one.
We had to quit. Our boss understood. He was a nice guy, I think. Anyway, it was only supposed to be a temporary leave until our health was under control.
We tried even harder to get better. After each meal, we had bad reflux, bloating, and had to lay down immediately. When we got up from the bed, we could feel our heart beating rapidly, and this made it very hard to walk without keeling over. We tried once again doing labs, and so we kept getting negative test after negative test back.
As our dizziness worsened, so did our anxiety.
It was at this point where keeping doctor's appointments became a challenge. Going to them was too taxing for our body and threatened to send us into a terrible stupor. We started depending upon our old roommate for more help in getting groceries. And still, preparing the food itself became a challenge. And eating it was a nightmare. Few foods, if any, tended to agree with our stomach. Sometimes nothing would stay down. We were tired and in pain after every meal. We were already on the skinny side, I think, but we started losing even more weight. It eventually got to the point where even taking a shower would cause us to fumble over. When the pain got really bad, we'd go to the same hospital because that was our only choice. The only one in town that would accept us without charging an arm and a leg. But the thing is, at that point, we'd probably have given an arm and a leg of our mind and body to go back to the way they were. The docs would give us some pain meds and fluids and an IV, and then we'd have to leave because they had assessed we weren't in a medical emergency. We began to think we weren't really sick because none of the tests showed anything serious. Was our illness all in our heads? Was it? Let's look at the facts. Food wouldn't stay down. Sleep was never as restful as it should have been. Our mind was in some sort of psychosis. So no, it wasn't completely in our heads, although our mental state wasn't doing us any favors at the time. And besides, sick is sick.
We were quite depressed, though. That part was true enough.
Every single day was a dead day at this point. Simple things we took for granted, like getting up to go to the computer, became a luxury. Basic motor functions started to become an issue. Light and sound would set off our brain and cause us to have a jolting, piercing attack.
Good times.
We couldn't, in all good conscience, say that we were living, but we weren't dead yet either.
It felt like time itself lost its meaning in those days.
Looking back at it, though, through a clearer perspective, our illness was causing some sort of brain inflammation.
We stopped leaving the house at all, relying on our one friend for grocery support. At one point, we became entirely housebound and partially bedbound. Eventually, after a long period of struggling, we became entirely bedbound and lost the ability to walk.
Not functioning at a basic level is the scariest thought I can ever imagine. It is fucking terrifying.
It felt like we were an old man about to die, but we were still in our 20s at that point. It was pathetic. Our degenerate lifestyle was disgusting. I hated ourselves. I hated everything about ourselves. We had instilled that this illness was all in our heads so much and so often that we couldn't help but hate ourselves.
Still, Even when things were so bad we could barely remember our own name, we kept fighting.
We tried experimenting with a lot of meds, prices be damned.
Yes, that's right. Liam would shove meds down my throat all the time. He'd force all those goddamn pills on me! One after another. Some of them would make me not enjoy anything at all.
Some of them helped, didn't they?
Not to the point where we felt anywhere near better or functional. I hated you for it. If you weren't sick, then I wouldn't have had to deal with a diet of those shitty pills day in and day out. Our quality of life was a sick fucking joke, and I was so angry at you for making it worse. We tried to get better by your call, and fuck all that gave us. I was tired of you feeding me those damn pills. It was horrifying for me. I just wanted us to be out of pain no matter what. And to do that, there was only one final solution. I had to take control of this ship. Suppress the rest of you. There's only one way we could get out of pain.
I wasn't looking forward to getting to this part. But Ank, even if you wanted us to die, you never did it out of malice, right? You didn't hate anyone else, did you? And you didn't really hate us either. You just hated what we had become at that point.
At the time, suicide felt like the only rational thing. I was so disgusted by what we'd become that I couldn't stand us.
I still had hope that we could have good days.
I remember why I hated you so much, Axie. I hated seeing you, that annoying kid we once were without a care in the world. I was disgusted to be seen in your presence.
You were jaded.
Well, whatever the case, I wanted us out of pain.
But approaching a period I don't think I have any memories of, and I've been pretty on top of things so far. Was that because of what our brain was going through, or...?
It's because I took over as our primary form of consciousness. And I wasn't playing around anymore. We had almost no friends. We were losing more and more of our cognitive abilities every single day. We were in pain from the moment we woke up, and a few moments of the day where we slept in an hour or two of crappy sleep. In my mind, we were already dead. The experience of taking mind-altering pills and being unable to enjoy anything was too hard on me. Nothing was pleasurable, and nothing could make us feel any emotions other than pain. One time I tried to leave the house for some groceries. We got dizzy on the way there. I fell down on the sidewalk and couldn't get up for over 10 minutes.
And nobody bothered to come by and help you.
Of course. Of course.
Whenever we thought things had gotten bad, there was always deeper trouble waiting ahead.
A deeper rock bottom, huh?
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Soon we'd lose our voice. The doctors would put us on a feeding tube and we'd scrounge our last remaining dollars for the caregiver. That's if we were lucky and didn't just die alone in our stuffy, shitty apartment due to malnutrition. To prevent future suffering, I just wanted it to end. Everything had reached an all-time low. So one night, the last night, I decided to make us crawl out of our house. It was going to end. We'd had a 2-week stint in a mental hospital 2 years prior and were heading down that kind of road again. But I wasn't going to let that happen. We needed medical care, but the busy hospital would have been too much stimulation for our fried-up nervous system. Each step outside of our apartment, if you could even call it that, was agonizing. We were neither high nor drunk. We'd quit the medications. But looking at our malnourished, skinny ass struggle through the streets, I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking otherwise. The world was blurry and distorted, but I knew exactly where we had to go. There was a big building nearby that was open 24 hours. I don't know why, but there was no security guard on duty that day, so we were free to take the elevator all the way to the top floor.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Okay.
As we curled up in the corner of the elevator on the floor, we started to cry. Not from sadness, but happiness. It was finally time for us to be out of pain. Do you know how relieving that feels? No more endless torture ahead. But as we stood inches away from our release, I just couldn't do it after all. I thought how shitty it would be for the workers finding our body in the morning. What did they do to deserve that? I didn't want to get anyone else involved in my issues. I couldn't even do one simple thing. How much of a coward was I? You guys stopped me that time, didn't you?
No. You had too much power at that point. We couldn't stop you. You stopped yourself. All we did was remind you about the promise.
Ah, that damn promise.
Promise?
Wait, with the color, it's kind of hard to tell who's who, but I think this is Lana.
This is the first time I'm hearing about any promise.
Oh, that was Axie. Sorry. You were a part of it too, Axie. We all were.
Oh, there we go. There's the difference. My eyes playing tricks on me with the background.
I don't remember either. What did we promise?
That night wasn't the first night of that sort. Dark thoughts had nagged at us for years. So to combat them, before things ever got out of hand, we made a promise. A promise just to ourselves. That we would never break. If the disease wants to kill us, fine. If some other force beyond our control wants to kill us, so be it.
But we would never.
Now I remember! We won't give up!
Yeah, we'll fight against our illness with everything we can.
No matter how bad it gets, never kill myself. If I die, there won't be any good times ahead.
It was crazy because at the time it felt more logical to get out of the pain rather than spend time fighting against it. But we never killed ourselves despite not being comfortable in our own skin.
Living felt like a mistake. After that night, things got even worse for a while. Oh, I cursed you all for stopping me that night. For reminding me of that promise.
But the bad times did not last forever. I'm glad we held on.
Because of that promise, we held on suffering. Because we held on suffering, we were eventually able to find happiness again.
Almost 6 months after that day on the roof. We were snuggled up in bed during one of our good days, mindlessly watching videos online.
And that's when we saw something inconsequential. A video that made us laugh.
We hadn't had a real belly laugh in so long, so this was a welcome surprise.
It was a small thing, but it reminded us that we were human after all.
That great belly laugh, for just a moment, made us forget all the pain that had been bearing down on us so much. What is it that made us laugh so much exactly?
Well, it was the kind of video anyone might see on the internet.
That dumb video was a gateway into something that transformed our life.
On the screen was 2 people talking in a virtual world using user-created avatars.
The way they moved their hands in the game, it was the same way people moved their hands in real life. Something about the absurd nature of the interaction, the atmosphere in that scene was bewitching. So, and naturally we looked up the name of the game.
It was a new social game made for use with a virtual reality headset. We hadn't realized how far virtual reality had come as a technology, that even regular consumers could own them. But they were expensive. Much too expensive for us to afford, and aside from all that, you needed a nice PC as well. But that game we saw, there was a catch. It was free to play, and supported regular desktop users using a keyboard and a mouse. We decided to give it a go, despite not enjoying much of anything for a long time. Little did we know that playing that stupid game would change our lives. We genuinely thought it was all over for us beforehand. The only thing left to do in life was to suffocate slowly. But we booted up the game and sat there.
Even though we weren't comfortable moving yet, even though we hadn't changed yet out of the default avatar that the game assigned us.
We made a friend, didn't we? I'm starting to remember now. Oh, that friend brought us to a different world. A space world. Talked to us like we were a person. Eventually, we had a whole group of friends we met through that game.
At first, we could only play for an hour a day because anything more than that was too overwhelming.
But soon we could play 2 hours, 3 and 4, and even more. For the first time in a long time, things started getting better and better, didn't they? And our new friends would sometimes stream the game online too, so when we were laid up in bed, we could watch them on our phone too.
Playing this game was one of the more positive parts of our life, even after getting ill.
Anyway, as our relationship with this group grew deeper, we began to get more confidence and opened up to one of our friends. This friend listened to us without judgment.
And they accepted us, warts and all.
I just feel loved for the first time in a long time. We went on more adventures in the game.
And while we still had horrible days, we felt that life was not an unending nightmare anymore. The suggestion of one of our friends, we also did some deeper research into the symptoms of our illness. It was shocking to find tens of thousands, if not millions of people out there who had a similar set of symptoms and experiences we'd had all across the world.
Neglected or pushed off by certain doctors with hard to diagnose symptoms and a slew of negative tests.
Some were even worse off than we were. The most striking similarity between us all was the lack of quality of life.
This horrible illness that caused people to lose their jobs, lose their energies, in some cases lose their lives, actually had a name.
Myalgic encephalomyelitis. ME. Otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome. We connected with a new community of people affected by the disease, many of whom struggle to do even the most basic tasks.
That year, during the holidays, one of the nicest things ever happened to us, remember? In the game with our friends.
We'd slowly transitioned from being completely mute to typing to eventually using our mic. The last step to becoming fully immersed in the game was out of financial reach. It would be irresponsible to use the money our parents gave us on something other than the necessities since we couldn't earn any money on our own. But that holiday, a couple of our friends, well, needless to say, they surprised us. They had never met us in real life. They had no idea if what we told them about ourselves was true or false, and yet they pulled together some money for us to get better computer supplies and a virtual reality headset. It came in the mail, and for a second I thought there might have been a mistake. We were shocked, obviously. I need a moment there for a minute. Oh, okay.
Generally, it was hard for us to accept a present because we viewed ourselves as worthless.
It was just about the best present we could have asked for at the time.
To this day, and now, in whatever place this is, it's still one of the most meaningful gifts I've ever received.
We could now experience worlds that weren't our own. Looking in a virtual mirror, we could imagine anything. We could be anyone and go to places that we couldn't have imagined before.
But the true power and magic of VR was doing all those things socially.
With this technology, you didn't even need to be in the same room as others to interact with them. Eventually, for the first time in God knows how long, we started falling asleep with good thoughts in our minds, excited for the adventures to come the following day. Even if those adventures were virtual, it didn't matter.
Egghead? VR helmet we found in the tank. It was under Liam's rock. Is that?
It's gotta be why. A couple things are starting to make sense, but I think there are still more answers to uncover. I kinda had to step back for it a little bit. I was getting a little, kind of real there for a moment.
For the next year or so, we'd had a steady flow of improvements to our well-being. For the first time in a long time, we were distracted from our illness. That distraction helped us to focus. We began documenting our symptoms in a personal journal.
In a notebook.
Yeah, we researched academic publications and jotted down things we could do to try to improve our physical and mental health in a notebook. Our energy, our mood, our sleep, and most importantly, our digestion all seem to improve.
For a time.
Yeah, but we can't focus on just the sad things that happened. We might have done that in the past, but to do so now, after experiencing happiness again, just feels wrong.
That year of improvement didn't send us back to normal, not even close, but any sort of improvement was a big step forward. It was only small things at first. Our energy was limited, so we decided to use it economically for stuff that made us feel good, like taking care of our hygiene. We followed our own schedule. We made sure to do our own laundry, and even cook if we were feeling up to it. Our goal was to depend less on our old friend. We opened up the windows in our room for a few minutes each morning. Although the sun was initially harsh due to our compromised systems, we worked our way through it, and eventually, we started going outside to take walks. We're not talking epic multi-hour-long walks. It was merely taking a few minutes to walk down the street, trying not to be dizzy, trying not to have a panic attack. Our ultimate goal in doing this was to be able to go to the grocery store on a regular basis, and sometimes on night walks where we'd had good rest and our body wasn't in searing pain, we could walk down the 2 blocks to the grocery store and come home with a small cat basket of food.
This didn't happen consistently.
Sometimes we'd had horrible panic attacks on the way there and had to turn back, hoping we wouldn't plant our face in the concrete as we had before. But compared to our previous state, this was a major improvement.
Even if it was only through a few things, we felt like we had our independence back.
And with this encouragement, we started to push towards a positive mindset.
One of the most productive steps we ever made was forgiving ourselves for being so sick.
It's important to have realistic expectations of what you can and can't do in life.
We had realistic expectations for our life before it all turned to shit. The ability to work for ourselves, to think for ourselves. And at some point we wanted to have enough money to eventually travel. Living in this room forever wasn't the plan.
We loved Enkinos, but our bad experiences here had clouded the city. Wouldn't it be nice to start over somewhere new? VR was a great escape, but it wasn't real life. We wanted to know what it would be like to experience new cultures, try different foods, and see in real life the kind of places that we never thought we could see. There's no law against dreaming. Normal life, coming home and spending time with the family, happiness.
But our mind wouldn't let that fantasy run very far, because it wasn't possible. To make a family would require meeting new people. We didn't think it was fair to expect someone to spend their lives together with us if we couldn't take care of ourselves.
I think that's wrong, Ank. I think it was still possible for us to meet new friends, even in our state. We had online. And besides, there's no shame in dreaming about those things. We began to get excited for the future as well. In October, the Enkinos World's Fair was to be held, an event which only happened once each decade. Our old friend group, from when we were kids, contacted us and asked if we wanted to meet up there as a little reunion. We were getting to the point where going out in public for an extended period of time felt like it could be a real possibility. The old friends had mostly moved away from the small town of Enkinos in search of wider pastures. It was a rare opportunity to see them once again.
But as the date of the fair got closer, our symptoms started to flare. We hadn't gotten over our eating problem, and even one wrong food would send us into a terrible spiral, resulting in total exhaustion.
We didn't sleep too great in the week leading up to the fair.
The bad sleep in turn affected our fragile nervous system and anxiety.
We had hyped ourselves up so much for the event, meeting our friends and getting out of our dingy apartment, that it didn't feel right to cancel it, though.
In retrospect, we should have just told them we weren't feeling good.
Well, we tried, but didn't really get the point across. They didn't know how sick we had become. I remember being so nervous the night before about everything. The Uber ride there, walking around a vast amount of people, eating new food. The next morning, with no sleep, we headed off.
We were delusional to think we could attend something like that by ourselves.
When we exited the car, the first thing we did was find a bench to sit down, and then it all hit us at once. The amount of people passing by, the heat, the loud voices, our weak legs, our labored breath, our blurry vision, our foggy mind, our shaking hands. If this kept up, we knew that this would result in another seizure. And so, with our mind racing and our head feeling like it was about to burst, we called a ride home. We didn't see anything but the very outskirts of the fair, and we certainly never met with our old friends. About 3 hours later, laying on the bed out of breath, feeling numb and tired, we sent them a message that we wouldn't be able to make it. Then we turned off the phone and tried our best to endure the hell our body was giving us for the next 12 hours.
At some point, we turned our phone back on and we were bombarded with messages. Where are you? We're waiting. Did we get the place right? Hey, are you okay? What the hell, man? Where are you? It looked like the message we sent them didn't go through. We apologized. The whole situation was irresponsible of us and we were embarrassed. We spent the next few days in a haze, unable to go on the computer, spending our time dealing with pain. When we eventually went back onto the computer to talk to our online friend group we'd met in VR, felt like something had changed. Only a few members of the group were online. For us, it was an incredibly close group, but they had started to splinter. Real-life obligations had become too much for them. As they were caught up with their own things, we didn't talk to them much in the next few months. Everything crept up on us once again. Our mental state was getting worse, and all of our terrible symptoms were flaring in full force. None of this should have mattered. We felt like we were taking ourselves too seriously. Since we had started going to the supermarket on our own, we had stopped relying on our family friend as much. And they hadn't talked to us much either. We felt ashamed being so miserable all the time. We just had to get over ourselves. It just didn't feel right to talk to our online friends only when we were miserable, which all the time now. So we decided to keep our distance for the moment.
And since food, even safe foods, were starting to make us sick, stopped eating.
This is where time stops for me yet again. Things are very foggy and my memory is fragmented. I remember dry heaving into a bag next to our bed.
I remember wanting to get water but being weak, too weak to stand up.
I remember a lot of confusion.
Remember our stomach, despite not eating, being inflated and bloated. Our image when we looked into the mirror was of a pregnant skeleton. Every inch, every single fiber of our body ached incredibly. For a long time. All of this and more.
How many times did we go on this shitty merry-go-round of suffering? Getting sicker, getting slightly better, having hope and having it all crushed down again.
Nothing is forever, Hank. There's an end to everything. I remember a light.
Me too. An annoyingly bright light. Our head went thump, thump, thump. We couldn't speak.
Somehow we weren't in as much pain as before. That was due to the meds they injected into us every hour.
The doctors and nurses mumbled when they talked.
Seizures, septic shock, malnutrition, kidney dysfunction, traumatic brain injury.
So many words were being thrown everywhere. It was all a bother. We'd had so many tests before, and the doctors had told us nothing was wrong with us so many times.
So what was happening?
Our confusion was so great that we didn't have the ability to process everything.
All we knew was that the hospital lights were too bright. That place was too loud, and the constant blood tests were too annoying.
We learned fragments about our situation. Our old friend was the one who found us in some awful state and called the ER. We didn't know how much time had passed. The main thing killing us was this something called sepsis. Oh, sepsis. None of you guys remembered much after this, right?
Not me.
Or me.
You see, this was what I was afraid of. Our body being in so much agony and discomfort that we'd reach an even lower state. It's like RB said, there are an infinite number of rock bottoms. The rest of our life was short and miserable and devoid of the things that made us feel human in the first place. Personality and pleasure. They were absolutely disgusting of us.
That's not true. I think there's more good that's happened to us. The person who found us was our old friend from childhood. The one who stuck by us for so long. I think she visited us often in those final days. She wanted to be a marine biologist, remember? Oh. When we were in the hospital, she showed us a cute gif on their phone. Of what? An axolotl. Oh.
I've seen this gif. It's cute as hell.
She used to show us this funny gif on her phone of an axolotl sitting in the tank opening its mouth and reacting too late to a food flake. The axolotl was so dopey that it made us laugh. Don't you guys remember? I think she may have showed us that gif before the hospital, too. It was her favorite thing to show people because of how cute it was. She would talk at great lengths about axolotls, about their incredible regeneration powers, and how scientists were studying them for some stem cell research, their incredible resistance to diseases like cancer, and how they were almost extinct as well. We were fascinated too. To us, these silly creatures seemed almost mythical. Her obsession must have been contagious. We fantasized. Wished we could regenerate ourselves like an axolotl could. We put all of our soul into that delusion. And I guess it came true in a somewhat of a roundabout way.
The doctors couldn't do much to fix our poisonous blood.
It was too late. How did someone so young get into such a state?
What was the cause?
Our body was so messed up that it even rejected IV nutrients. The specialist looking at our long history of tests finally concluded that perhaps an unknown autoimmune illness had been slowly wreaking havoc on our body for years. I think at the very end we were finally diagnosed with something. It did little good to be diagnosed so late, though. But those last days weren't terrible. Due to talking with our friend, I think that we had managed to, ever so slightly, climb up from our biggest rock bottom yet. We died with the thought of axolotls on our mind. We were invisible to the world for a long time while we were alive.
The saddest part to me is not even our own death, but the fact that there were, as we learned, countless others in pain whose quality of lives got cut short due to illness.
I see. So that was our life before the tank.
Hey, Hank?
Glad I met you again.
Look, all you dorks, but especially you, Liam. I'm sorry I hated you so much. It wasn't any of your faults that we ended up the way we did. Even after everything is said and done, I'm proud that we kept trying for good health, instead of giving up and going down the path I wanted. Good times were worth the amount of pain.
That was a lot to take in. How do you guys feel? I can only speak for myself, but I feel great!
What? Even after all these years, you still find a way to surprise me, Axie. Didn't our suffering affect you at all?
Of course it did! That was sad, dude. But now it's over. I mean, being in all that pain for all that time, dealing with all that anxiety is, well, there's no question that it sucked. But all this happened before our current life. Even if it was as an axolotl, the tank was a tremendous amount of fun. I don't know if we're living, technically, but right now I don't feel any pain. The only thing I'd regret is if we stopped fighting, like Hank just said. But we didn't, even at the very end. I choose to move on from what we saw.
I want to move on too. But I refuse to completely ignore all the sickness completely. If I could, I would want to help people who are in a similar situation. Show them that there is hope. I know how special a simple act such as walking down the street can be for someone who is in a dire state of mind. I want to be happy and cherish each moment that I'm not in pain. And if I get in pain again, I'll search for a way out. It's that simple. How are you doing, Lana? You asked about us, but I want to know how you're taking it.
Well, it's as you said. There were a lot of hardships. But I think we still had plenty of great moments before getting sick that kind of got glossed over. Oh, that's right! Life is much more than just the sum of its parts. Like Liam just said, I'd like to help people as well if I got the chance.
Well, ain't that just like the lot of us? A few of us want different things, and yet somehow I can see all of our ideals coexisting at the same time. That's what it must be like to be whole. Probably a different personality emerges from that altogether. So, Neo, what's your take?
I accept what we just saw as the truth, more or less. A lot of it I told to you guys from my own mouth. I'd rather look at all of this through a new perspective. A lot of our obsessions that were a part of our personalities initially in the tank, such as mine to get home, make all the more sense. And Ankh, why so long ago you wanted to kill Liam so badly. That should be obvious too. But, you know, there are still good many things that don't make sense. Why are we here? Who's rock bottom? Why this whole roundabout game? With the tank, our essences as he puts it, this whole thing. What comes next? Good question.
I think we'll find out shortly. Me and Ankh have lived in an entirely different world under his orders for a while now. We sought out a kindred spirit and introduced them to RB. RB is gathering up a similar class of people. I'm not sure against who exactly or the details, but I think he means war.
Let's head back then. I'm not satisfied just learning about our old life. It's time for Rock Bottom to tell us everything once and for all. Yeah. Probably yes. Quite a few questions. Questions that can probably be answered in the next episode. Okay, I probably should have covered this in the previous videos, but I'll probably go ahead and just kind of bring this up a little bit now. I realize Christmas is actually coming up soon. So, as to regular uploads, we're going to have to wait and see how that's going to play out, but I don't know. If I don't have any videos popping up on any particular day during next week, whenever Christmas is going to be taking place, you can automatically assume that we're just going to be spending time with everybody. I hope everybody just stay safe. We'll just have to see. But, okay, so we finally learned the truth about Alan's life, and I kind of have an idea of what that autoimmune disease might be. Just an idea. But learning the truth about all of them just being facets of a single personality, that's interesting, to say the least. But admittedly, learning about the life was very hard to sit through. It was quite difficult. And it did hit me emotionally rather heavily. My God, it certainly hit me quite. Good job, Acta. You got me. But I'll just summarize it. That was hard to sit through. That was really. But in any case, if you all like this, let me know. Thank you all very much for watching, and whether you'll see me next week or the week after, find out. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see all of you guys in the next video.